how I got started in dev. Oh wow. Okay, who in this chat have been coding since they were like kids, like since they were 10? I am very envious of you. So I actually got into code at university. So I studied mathematics and psychology at Birmingham in the UK. And at the time, they were trying to get more people into computer science who have a background in non-computer science degrees. So they would go around and they'd had these adverts where just oh, so you do a 3-year degree, but you can just have 1 year of computer science in between your main degree. So you end up with a 4-year degree and you get computer science as a bonus. And I'm very indecisive and I really hate closing doors on myself. So I was thinking oh cool. So I can learn another skill and then just only have an extra year on my degree. And then the other thing was also that in mathematics in year 2, they teach you C++. That's the first programming language I did. And it sounds pretty scary, but if you spend 2 years doing all the mathsy stuff by hand, and then you realize that a computer can do it, that was a oh my god moment for me. It's why have I been doing this the long way? This is so much better. So obviously I went yes with the integrated year in computer science, where we learned Java, SVN, things that aren't so relevant these days. But it's some foundational stuff. And yeah, after that, I worked at a scientific programming company. I was based in Oxford, which is really fun, actually. So it was lots of data science, working at pharmaceutical companies. And then I wanted to move to London. And then what happened was I decided to want to move to London. And I was like, how do I get a job in London? And at the time, I don't know if that's still the case, but Hacker News has this monthly post, which is who wants to be hired and who's hiring. And I just posted there. I was like, I do a bit of Python, a bit of JavaScript, a bit of Angular. You want to hire me? And I got a couple of interviews, and I was so lucky to join a company that was a super early adopter of React. So we ran the React London meetups the entire time we were there. So I got really into React, and that's how I got more into community and teaching and that kind of stuff. And I left that company to join a startup briefly, and this was quite a while ago. And there was 3 of us at the startup, and we basically had to rewrite the entire platform for the startup. And we only knew React and Node. So obviously we used GraphQL, we used React on the front end. And then 3 weeks before the launch, we were told that we also need a mobile app. And we were like, shoot, well, none of us know how to do that. Thankfully, Expo was a thing already. So we actually used Expo for our app. And then that was about, I'm going to say 8 years ago. Yeah, about 8 years ago. And I've been working with React Native ever since.
Nice. That is so cool. It's kind of cool to see how you didn't start with React. You did something similar but different enough, and then you just decided, hey, this is where your passion is. So falling in love with React, needing to build a mobile app. And I think it's a great intro and segue to Expo, because one of the things that and troubles I have is I build a lot of React applications, regardless of
Mm,
Next.js, using TanStack. There's so many awesome ways to do it, but I
yeah.
always struggle when it's okay, I need to build a native app. And this is before I discovered Expo. I was like, man, I don't want to learn specific iOS stuff, especially if I want to support multiple devices. And then when I
Mhm.
discovered Expo, I was like, oh man, this is so cool. So for folks just joining in who may have not used Expo, can you give us a quick kind of thing, what does it solve and why folks should use it? And I'll bring up the website in just a bit.
Okay. Well, let's start with React Native. So obviously we know React, which is the web framework from Meta that we all know and love. So React Native is allowing you to use the same kind of component-based API, but to build native mobile applications. So how React Native is different from something like Flutter is, so Flutter is rendering on Skia, so it's kind of not native. So it's hooking into native APIs and stuff, but it's not rendering native components. Whereas with React Native, like you are like rendering like native libraries, native components. So what we keep saying is that React Native apps are native apps. And I'm assuming there's more React developers here than React Native developers. So imagine you're creating a new React app. If you've been a React developer for a while, you might have used Create React App at some point. But these days, I think you're more likely to use something like Next. But what you are not likely to do is create a new directory and then install React and then install Webpack and then try to figure out how bundling work and then try to figure out all this server-side stuff. You're not going to do that. You're going to use a framework like Next.js. And then Expo is basically Next.js for React Native. So React Native itself is like this toolkit of like APIs, and there's Hermes, the JavaScript runtime. There's like a bunch of things that come with React Native, but it doesn't like build the framework for actually building an app. So for example, React Native doesn't come with a navigation system. So when you open an app, you have like bottom tabs and you can navigate between them. So if you just use React Native on its own, it doesn't have that built in. So even for something as simple as that, you would need a framework or a separate library. And Expo is basically a collection of libraries, utilities, bundlers, like a whole ecosystem of things that makes building React Native apps like really pleasant and way easier than if you were just doing it the hard way. I believe you're muted or I can't hear you.
Oh, yeah, thank you for letting me know. I do that often. I was gonna say that's so cool because, I started with, developing my mobile app when I already just learned about Expo, and so I didn't have the pains of knowing what it's like building just with React Native. So it's so interesting that you get all these benefits right out of the box, and you just don't think about them, and things just like, "Oh, I have access to this, I have access to that," which I think it's kinda cool that I kinda missed all the pain just by starting with Expo from the start. And, you touched a little bit on kinda, developer experience, and that's what Expo help. Is there any, like, specific things that you wanna call out where Expo really shines, outside of what you just mentioned?
It's difficult to imagine building a React Native app without Expo, to be honest. So it is the official recommendation from Meta as well. So they want to keep the React Native core like really lean, and then just focus on the internals. Whereas for everything else, you would have a library. And then imagine that you are building a new app, and then you want to add an image, and you have to. So I'll show you. There is a directory that we maintain. It's called React Native directory, which I can link to. So we have this list of libraries. So you can see all the open source libraries that exist in React Native community. And imagine you're like, okay, I want to add an image. So what library do I use for it? Or like, I want to add a video player. What library do I use? I want to add push notifications. What library do you use? I want to add navigation. What library do you use? I want to add haptics, like the vibration. What library do I use? Imagine this decision fatigue you have like every single time you want to add a capability. Whereas with Expo, if you go to our docs, we have this lovely.
And
Wait, maybe
let
I
me
just
share your screen, actually.
okay. So React Native Directory is basically just like a collection. It's an open source, like you can go on GitHub and see it on and edit it. But it's basically just like a collection of all the React Native libraries out there. So say that you want to add video. So you're gonna search for video and you got React Native Video, React Native Video Player, video processing, video library. So even for something as simple as video, which isn't included in React Native Core, you have so much choice. And this is the same for everything. Like it's the same for like lists, it's the same for audio, etc. But if you're using Expo, we have an SDK, which is basically a collection of native libraries. So it's in the reference docs. So this here is the Expo SDK, and then these are all the libraries that we build and maintain, and they are guaranteed to work with that Expo SDK. So for example, for video, we have, we had Expo AV, which did video and audio, but we've broken that into two separate libraries. So Expo Video, for example. So it kind of helps. So if you're like, okay, I want to do video, let's see if there's an Expo SDK library that does what I want. And if there is, you could just use that, and then yeah, it'll be much easier. And then the other thing, especially for people getting started, well, if you're coming from React, this is actually a blog post. I'll link it in the chat as well, that I wrote. That's this. Hopefully, it's been quite useful for React developers who are coming into native for the first time. You have this thing where you have like these unknown unknowns. You don't know the things that you don't know, right? So how do you find them out the hard way? So this was like, because obviously I came to React Native from React. It was a while ago, but I still remember it. And it basically is just a collection of, it's kind of like a brain dump of like, here are all the things that are different that you might not know. And it's like a decent starting point if you just, if you're completely new. That's one thing. And then the other thing that, because you asked like what's special about Expo, and I think Expo Go is something that's quite special. So it is the quickest way to get started building real native apps without like actually like having native build tools and having to build the native binary. You download Expo Go from the Apple Play Store, and then you're just bundling the JavaScript, and we already have all the native code. So you can start developing really, really quickly. And unsurprisingly, these days, this is what a lot of the AI app build are like building on top of, because you can go from like nothing to like getting your to-do app on your phone, this like amazing feel good moment in like literally minutes.
Yeah, that's awesome. I did have a quick question. I love the Expo Go app. I just preface this. I am new to Expo. I'm building out I did like few dummy projects just to kind of learn about Expo and React Native, but I'm actually building like a real app that I want to deploy to the world. And I, when you use Expo Go, does it have access to all the features, or is there certain features where you need to do like an iOS build or platform specific build?
That is a very wonderful question. So let me share my screen again. So we actually try to make this like like more explicit. So we do say that Expo Go is for learning and prototyping. So we don't recommend it for like if you're building an app for a company. Like you should use a development build because then you're in control of what's in a native bundle. But if you go on the Expo SDK, you'll notice this tag here that says included in Expo Go. Whereas I think if you go to, I'm trying to remember like what isn't included. There's a couple that aren't, but oh, Expo Video isn't. Oh yeah, because that's yeah. Anyway, so yeah, so like when you see this tag, then this means that you can use this library in, this is the SDK version, that SDK versions of Expo Go. But if you, for example, so we have some like third-party libraries as well that are popular. So we have Reanimated, that's included in Expo. We got Flashlist, Master View, NetInfo. So like all of these libraries like exist. Whereas if you now go to React Native directory and then, okay, so let's say maybe that's not a great example. I get React Native Video Trim. So this is a random library that I can see that is available Android and iOS, but not on Expo Go. So this library wouldn't work. Whereas I think we have an Expo Go flag here. React Native Video isn't included either. Flags in Expo Go. There you go. We even have a filter for this. So yeah, I can see that these are the ones that could be used in Expo. And we have this guide that I've been trying to keep up to date, which is on development builds. There's quite a lot of information there, but it's a full explanation of like what's different between Expo Go and a development build. And if you're like, oh, I can't be asked, I want like a summary, you can go to our docs and then ask AI, which is I think what we all do all day, every day these days. So when do I have to use a development build? And then this will look at our docs and then give you like a summarized version of whatever you want to know. So it's like a good way to, if you like don't know where to look in the docs, you can like ask AI and then like click on the links and then read more when appropriate.
Yeah, that's awesome. And again, being new to Expo and learning about it, I know in the past some of the like maybe misconceptions now, but this is like a while ago. A lot of folks were saying, "Oh, it's just a wrapper around your React Native app," but there's really doesn't hook in into like very like particular native features. And I think Expo came like a long way where a lot of the stuff is actually natively compiled to iOS or whatever device that you pick. And so I guess I would have a follow-up question. If are there certain limitations that Expo has where someone has to, okay, you know what, you just need to build an iOS app, or is there a way to hook in into the native functionality of those devices?
There are no limitations whatsoever. So the only limitation you might have is self-imposed if you are using Expo Go and you are not ready. Like you're just like, I don't want to build my own native app. But once you go from Expo Go to development build just means that you, instead of using Expo Go, you are creating the native shell yourself. So rather than the libraries that we pick, you pick the libraries that will be in your native bundle, and then you can use them, right? And then once you do that, there are no limitations whatsoever. Something that is actually quite unique and interesting is a thing called CMG. So let me go to search because can never find where the CNG docs are. Okay, so if you have ever built a React Native app like the old-fashioned way, actually, let me just open an app here. Right, so this is, well, actually, I was like, I wasn't sure if there are like people here who are interested in like what's coming in the next SDK. So this is actually the new template that we have in SDK 55. So I've built this as a development build. So I've used like npx expo run iOS. So now if I just start the bundler, it will actually, so switch to development build. There we go. Yeah, so this is actually, if you know our old template, this will be fun to see. So it will look a bit different. So this is what you'll be getting like out of the box. So we have light and dark mode, we have fancy bottom tabs, we have a little animation. So you can see that I'm not using Expo Go. Like I have Expo Go is here, right? And it's like if I'm just building a JavaScript bundle, like I could open it in Expo. But this here is a native app that I've built, which means that I can add like whatever native code that we want. And when you do npx expo iOS, what actually happens is that we use a process called CNG, which you might also know as pre-build. And pre-build basically means is that we take the package JSON, we take our app JSON, we take our node modules, and then we generate the iOS and Android projects. So these folders here, I don't know if you can see them, but they're grayed out. So they're in Git ignore. I'm not going to check them and they always get like thrown away and regenerated. But if you were like not using Expo at all, not opting into CNG, like you would commit these folders into Git and have to maintain them and manage them and like touch all the native code and like version it and like upgrade it and like it's a nightmare. Whereas with CNG, and you can read more in the docs if you're more interested, we basically throw them away and regenerate them as needed. Which is why when you need to, for example, upgrade React Native, it's really, really easy because like all you're doing is like you upgrade all the versions, throw away the native folders, and then just regenerate it with the new versions of the libraries. And then that's something that is like really powerful with Expo that you wouldn't get without. It is not mandatory. You can also use Expo without opting into pre-build, but it's like one of the like key things that if you get used to it, you're like, how did I do this manually? That was the worst. And you were asking, can I hook into native code? So there's two ways you do this. So one is that you build your own Expo modules. So if we go to creating Expo modules, so we have a tutorial as well, Expo modules API. There you go. So the Expo modules API is a way to create your own native code. So say that there's a new feature that dropped from Apple or Google, and you're like, oh, I want to use it in my app, but there isn't an open source library yet. You can be the one that creates it. So we have this little template that you can run. So you can do it outside of your project to create a module that you could then deploy to NPM, or you can do it within your project, like here, like this example, and then it's just for use for your app. And this will come with like some templates so you can see like how to like create a native view, how to like hook into Kotlin and Swift and that kind of stuff. And then next time you like regenerate these iOS and Android folders, your native app will have access to this native module. So you can do like whatever you need. And the other thing is if for some reason you need to edit something, let's say one, two, where's my app delegate? Yeah. So hopefully this never happens, but if for some reason you need to edit something in your app delegate or in your Xcode project, or there's usually like in the properties, the input plist, if there's something that needs editing, what you do is you create a config plugin. So config plugin. There's even a tutorial. So a config plugin, and there's an array of them here in my app.json. So the plugins array is like, you know how these folders get generated? So as part of the generation, we do a bunch of things. We have a bunch of config plugins, but then libraries have a bunch of config plugins, and you can create your own. So there's literally like an input will be like, let's say the file you want to edit, and then you can use mods to, that's an example here. So that's an Android. There we go. So info plist. So you use an info plist mod in your little function. This is an example of it. And then you can edit this plist file and then add values to it. So you can make any changes. And the benefit of like having these not checked in but regenerated is that the process is repeatable. And then you can always test for it and retry. So it's
Yeah,
fun.
that's so cool and awesome. It's actually cool to see that there is literally no limitation. And I didn't know that you could create these Expo modules that you could use native code, which is pretty cool. And one of the things that I think stands out with Expo and why I think for me, and I think for a lot of people makes sense, a lot of us come from web dev and know React and very comfortable with React. And so this transition to instead of learning this new thing, Expo basically empowers you to take your idea from beginning to a point, like put it in front of your customers like fairly quickly because you're already doing things you already know how to do, especially like with React Native, and Expo just helps to make those things easier. And the last question, I have a couple of questions, but before we talk about Expo's like kind of open source side of things, and also kind of like what services you offer that make people's jobs much easier. I did want to talk about like once you build your app, what is the deployment process works for if you want to like push it to like different storefronts? Because I think that's another point of friction sometimes people think
Yeah.
about when building apps.
Yeah, I will answer that, but I just saw some questions in the chat that are related to what I was just talking about. So I
Awesome.
wanted
Yeah,
to,
perfect.
yeah, so Diego asked, can these modules work outside of Expo? So you need the Expo SDK to use Expo modules. So if you have a bare React Native project that doesn't use Expo at all, you would install the Expo SDK. So literally like, npm install Expo. And that's the only prerequisite. So after you have the Expo SDK, then you can use Expo modules. I think we have a guide. We should have a guide. So if you go to our docs and like ask about how to use them outside of like without CNG, then it will tell you. And the other question was, what are the limitations in comparison to native development? In many, many ways, React Native development is much easier than native development. So I've done some like native, like Expo Go, for example, is a native app. So I've done some development on Expo Go. It is so much more painful than working on Expo apps because every time you make a change, you have to rebuild the whole app to see it. I know like Swift like has like these per page views, but even those take like a long time. So yeah, there are some things that you need to learn to do a different way. So, for example, this generation, like generating code with CNG, but then like there aren't limitations. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think for me, the way I think about it is like if you're already like a professional iOS developer and you build native apps, like just stick to what you know. But for me, I feel like I'm a web developer and React is something I'm so comfortable with. And so to me, you know, the problem that Expo solves is that I don't have to worry about how to build a native app. I could just do it with the knowledge I already have. And to me, there's all these tools that are coming on which allow folks to build things faster and solve business needs faster. And so where in the past I was like, oh, it's gonna be so difficult to build iOS app, and especially for this new idea I'm building, like you literally need an iOS app. Nobody will want to go to a website to use the service that I have like an
Yeah,
idea for. And so to me, like the fact that I can do it with the least amount of friction is amazing.
that's awesome.
And
Uh,
then maybe we could talk about the deployment portion of it, and
yes.
then a couple other things.
So I was just posted the 2 links that are to do with, store deployments that are, like, good to know, and actually here is a bonus link, which I think you will find very appealing. Okay, so deploying mobile apps is different from deploying websites for 2 reasons. Because of build signing, so you have a bundle that needs to be signed with a credential which confirms your authenticity for the stores. And also, it has an approval step, which is pretty crazy if you're used to web development. So, between you having your app, just like you're building it, maybe you have it on your development phone, to me being able to download it from the App Store, there is a person on the Apple side that actually downloads the app. It's usually on iPad actually, tries it out, makes sure you're not breaking any rules, and then gives you a thumbs up. So there is a literal manual step between them, which is kind of crazy. And then this makes it a bit slower. So I've the 2 docs that I've shared just give you some insights on what's different, so around how to create credentials, because it's different between iOS and Android. iOS is a little bit more complicated, as it always is. Android is a little bit easier. You have to pay for a developer account on both. So on iOS, I think it's $99 a year for your account. For Android, I think you get a lifetime membership for $30. But you have to actually get a developer account. And in both cases, you have to prove your identity in terms of like your address and things like that. Anyway, this is a common and persistent pain point, so I'm glad you asked about that. So it is something that we have wanted to make as easy as possible. So because of that, we recently launched a product called Launch, which I linked to there as well, launch.expo.dev. And basically, it's still in beta, but you basically, if you have a GitHub repo that's public, you enter the GitHub repo in there. In fact, let me just open it and we can look together how it looks. So here, so you put the GitHub repo URL here. Actually, I'll go through the demo so you'll see what it looks like, and you'll choose if you want the App Store. We don't have Play Store yet, but hosting. So I don't know if I mentioned. Actually, let me just quickly show you. So this is the new template, and if I go to W, I can open it in the web. So you can use the same code base to do iOS, Android, and the web. And we have a hosting service so you can deploy your website as well. So actually, this website, the launch.expo.dev website and the backend are hosted on our own hosting service. Anyway, so let's say that you put your GitHub URL here, you want to launch it to the App Store, then you sign into your Expo account, you need an account in expo.dev, then you choose the project on your Expo account, so you would have had the project linked already. Then at this point, you need to have an Apple developer account, which you can log into it here. So this step is needed because in order for your app to even be uploaded to Apple, it needs to be signed with certificates that only Apple can give you. So basically, you get this developer account, you log in, and then we say, okay, here's an app ID that I want to register. Please, can I have a distribution certificate and a distribution provisioning profile? And then they'll be like, cool, yeah, there you go. And then we take those, and then you link to the app. We take your code, we take the certificates, and then we build it on our on EAS and submit it using EAS submit to the stores. So with this website, you can go from a repo to a app on TestFlight just on this website. And fun fact, I don't know if you've seen, there was an exciting Replit announcement. It was even on CNBC News, which was pretty funny. But basically, it's an AI startup that allows people to vibe code React like mobile apps and deploy it to stores. And Replit is actually using Launch under the hood to go from like this vibe coded app like on your website to actually the stores. So yeah, it's used in production. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And I was going to say, I think a lot of folks have different experience. So there's a lot of developers who are utilizing AI tools to get started quicker or build things quicker. And I think that's one benefit React, I feel, has over other languages is that there's so much documentation that AI models were trained on React that it's much easier to work in that type of code base. So it's kind of cool to see that. And the fact that with Expo Launch, you're solving one of the hardest problems, which is like that pain point of like, oh my gosh, I don't want to go through this manual process of deploying my
Yeah.
app, which is kind of cool. And I guess I wanted to ask, like, just to make sure like we didn't miss anything, I did want to have you talk about like kind of, I know you mentioned Launch as one of the services. Are there like other services that you provide from Expo that make people's job much easier? And also, I know you have like open source side of things, and then you have
Yeah.
like your services. Can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah. So Expo basically has two parts. There is the open source free side, which is the Expo SDK. So if you go to, I don't know where I stopped sharing my screen. I should just share my screen all the time. If you go to like GitHub on Expo, like this is basically the Expo open source monorepo. So all of this is completely free to use. It will always be completely free, and there is no lock-in. The other parts that of our business, and well, I guess we need to make money somewhere somehow, right? Is EAS. So this is like the services that we provide. So we have EAS build, which is the CI/CD service that lets you build your native app. The reason that this is desirable is that you, for example, need a Mac machine in order to build an iOS app. But using ES build, you can trigger a build because, like, locally you just have your JavaScript code, right? You can trigger a build on our build services. So it will download your code on a Mac machine and then install it, build it, and then you can actually use it. And then we have Submit. Submit is actually free to use for everyone, which takes a built app binary and uploads it to the stores. And again, you're like, well, why can't I just like drag and drop it? Well, another fun fact for Apple, you actually can't. So on the Apple UI, it's not possible to just upload the app. On Google, you can. But on Apple, you need to use this app called Transporter app. Yeah, this app. So you need a Mac in order to upload your app to the stores. So again, like this is like useful if you are like, I mean, I use it even though I use a Mac as well because it's just so easy. But yeah, it will just like it will upload the apps to stores. And then we have update. So update is right, because your native app is like, the native code and then it's JavaScript code on top of it. You could swap out the JavaScript code so you can push bug fixes without doing another native release and waiting for like the review times, and like you could take like several days. So that's what update is for. Then hosting is our web hosting service. So like I mentioned, like Launch is using hosting. You can like, if you are building like any Expo Router project, you can like build the web version of it and then host it. And also the major benefit of it is that you can write server code, like API code within your React Native code base. So, the way you do it is, where is cursor? Yeah, so like in your source folder, let's say I do a new file and I say, I don't know, posts.api.ts. And then this one, I will export function. And then it will be an HTTP method. So it will be post. There you go. Let's do a get. And I think we need this to be a response.json. What am I wrong? Turn. JSON. Okay, there we go. So now, hopefully, if I go here, /API. Oh, no, I called it posts. Okay, the output needs to be server. Yeah, so the default template isn't using server mode. Okay, now I need to restart. It will start. Okay, let's try it now. Yay! Okay, right. So now I have written server code from my React Native codebase. And the reason this is cool is that React Native codebase is like a website, right? You can't put any secrets in there. So in order to, let's say, integrate with like OpenAI or something, then you now need to like create a Vercel function or a Lambda function, or like basically I need a separate service to do that, and then like set it up and deploy it or whatever. Whereas now you can write this code in this code base. And then another cool thing, so if you have like an env file here, let me add it to my GitHub node. Right, so if I have an env file here, so I'll have expo public API URL, right? This can be used in my front-end code. So like if I use it in here, I can console log it, like that value will show up, and it will also show up in here. However, if I don't prefix my environment variable with extra public, so if I say API key, let's say super secret value, right, and it's not extra public, then it is only visible in routes that end with plus API. So now you have one code base, server-side code, client-side code, and then you know that your secrets are safe, and you can deploy your server-side code with ES hosting. You also have a flag if you don't want like a website, you just want the API routes, then it's no SSG, I think. So you'll do like MPX export, platform web, and then no SSG. I think it's going to be an alias to it. That would be easy. But this will create like a server bundle that you could deploy that only includes this API route. And actually, I can see it. So in a client, it just has an empty HTML, and then on the server, I have one function with the code that I've written in my API route. And now I haven't set up hosting for this, but I could just do ES. Yeah, if you do ES deploy, and then it will just deploy it to Expo Hosting, and then you can use it. So that's what hosting is. I worked on hosting, so that was hence the tangent. Yeah, and then we have obviously Launch, our newest exciting thing. And there's actually something new that I've been working on, which I can do like a very small preview of. But basically, we are working on an observability project. So, not the goal of it is to be able to, like, I'm going to say, observe your app's health in terms of performance, because like a product like that doesn't really exist. So, on the web, you can have like the Lighthouse scores, or from Google, where you see like time to interactive and that kind of stuff. There isn't an equivalent for native. So like there are people who've like tried building their own bits, like tried building it like kind of, I don't want to say hacking it together, but kind of like doing like bits and pieces to try to like create their own dashboards in like Datadog. Let me just show you a quick example. So I can't show you the real thing because this is I'm not gonna say secret. It's not a secret because I'm sharing it, but it is like not ready yet. So this is an example. So I took some screenshots earlier. I even took them in dark mode. There we go. So this is like a native metric for how long it takes, like when you open your app, how long it takes for the JavaScript bundle to be loaded into memory. And then you'll be able to see this value like over time. And the cool thing is that if you now publish another version, then you'll be able to hover over that version and you'll see how the introduction of that version changes this metric. So in this case, it's actually great because you publish a new version and the metric's the same. But if you publish a new version and the metric goes up, so it takes longer, then you know that something's wrong. And you'll be able to then like dig into these metrics for like different devices and like look at the like slowest ones and then see other metrics from that session and then like try to find like commonalities for like why like some metrics are lower. So that's something new that we're working on.
That's really cool. There are a couple of questions in the chat. One is,
But
can you also deploy an app that is in a monorepo and the backend is built with a different tech stack via Expo Launch?
I don't think we have monorepo support yet. It's still in beta. I think right now it's still it has to be a public repo as well. So I think we have lots of things planned, but at the moment it's not possible.
Okay, but that makes sense. And then another question somebody wanted to know, do you use any cursor rules for Expo, like cloud code skills, which were also shared on Expo LinkedIn post?
So I don't think we have a repo for cursor rules in the same way. So we use Claude code internally, as you can tell. But I'm pretty sure you can like cross-reference these because they're open source. So you can just copy them and put them into your cursor rules if need be.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Like what I've been doing a lot is just pointing to different like Expo projects
Hmm.
repos, so they're just asking questions around it to give context to the LLM, like when I'm trying to build a feature or something, which is
Yeah.
kind of cool. And then another question somebody asked, is there like a best practice for managing styling or theming? They use an example, like for instance, they use CN and Tailwind with via like design tokens. Is there a similar way in mobile? I've been using NativeWind as you know, but are there any other approaches?
Yeah, so you basically have three options. I feel like we did a live stream on a blog about this, but okay, so you have three options. So first is to use the built-in style sheet. So style sheet create. You can in fact even not use it at all. You can just pass in a style object, which is equivalent to using inline styles like on the web. So that is the default approach. And the thing about that is like, I mean, it works quite well, but it can be quite, I'm going to say verbose if you are supporting light and dark mode. Like that's the downside of it. But for example, if you know Infinite Red, their Ignite template, just Infinite Red Ignite here on GitHub. So Infinite Red are a consultancy in the US. They are awesome. And they have this open source template that they use for all their client projects. And that's a pretty big notable example of a template that actually doesn't use any styling library. They don't even use StyleSheet Create, they just use like style objects. And if you dig into that, like they have like really solid patterns on how that's achievable. So that's a good example. Then the second thing you can use is NativeWind, like you were using, Paul. So NativeWind is literally Tailwind, but for native apps. So you will have a plugin. You will use the same kind of class names, and then you have a plugin that basically does the replacing. So yeah, it works pretty well. The downside of it is that you do end up with like mobile apps that kind of look like websites. So if you're like, if you like, if your goal is like to be indistinguishable from a app that's only built using, Swift or Kotlin, then it might not be the best, like using a Tailwind defaults might not be the best option. And then the third notable one is Uniwind. Oh, sorry, not Uniwind. Sorry, I am thinking of Unistyles. So Uniwind is their like Tailwind like API, but basically this is Unistyles. And Unistyles is basically very similar to StyleSheet Create, but it makes StyleSheet Create into a function so that you can like define theming elsewhere. And I think it's pretty cool. Like I think it's a very like clean and easy approach for doing your light and dark mode. So I've used it on a personal project before. But yeah, those are the three options. And it's kind of up to your preference. If you come from the web and you just want to get started, then going for NativeWind is easy because it's like you don't have to learn another thing.
If you want your apps to look very native specific, is there a recommended approach? Like you said, if you use like NativeWind, they'll look like pretty much Tailwind websites. But if you want to have more of that native experience,
Yeah, I mean, for the native experience, you should read the Google and Apple design guides. And also, so with Expo Router and Expo UI, we have like native components that we are exposing more. I mean, Expo UI is still in beta, so like I've used it, but it's like not really ready in some way. So like it needs some polish. But like that's where it's heading to. So like using like native buttons, like native controls, having like using glass buttons, using like segmented controls, like things that exist in Swift UI and in Jetpack Compose.
Nice. Awesome. And that's pretty awesome. If anybody else has questions, definitely go ahead, ask them in chat. And I just wanted to kind of show a little project that I'm building. And I know, and maybe ask some questions around it. But so I'll share my screen quickly. Like the part that I really like about Expo is that like I already, obviously I work at Strapi, so I love using Strapi, my favorite headless CMS, not just because I work here, but because I've been using it forever. And the cool part is that in Strapi, you could manage all your content. And one of the coolest things in Strapi, I feel like you can make custom fields. So like this map component that I have here, I created as a custom field that allows non-technical users easily look up locations. Like for instance, I'll look up Hartford, that's in Connecticut, United States, where I used to live. So I'm able to kind of save it and publish the location and what have you. And what's awesome, I have a web app that kind of has that same map functionality. And this is going to have slightly different use than the mobile app. And I realized that I don't want to make a web app that people just could consume on their phone for a couple of reasons. One, I feel like web apps on phones tend to be janky, and the closer to native you get, the better. And so I created a native version of that application. And I'm still in the process of building. One of the ideas here, it's like when you go to your homepage, you're going to see your favorite locations or by other users within a certain radius. And then you'll also have a full map view where you could see like everything. But the cool part that I was going to say is that I love the fact that I can simultaneously work on my Strapi backend. I have my plugin. This is the Strapi plugin Mapbox that I'm building. I have my client, which is my Next.js app that's going to take slightly different shape than like my mobile app. And my mobile app, I have it all in one directory. And I know like the previous questions, like, hey, we don't support monorepo, but I feel like it's not a big issue since this could be its own repo. And then I could easily like deploy it via Launch Expo. And to me, the fact that the going from my client app to having a mobile app with Expo was not a difficult process. And to me, like I feel like empowered to continue building my product without feeling bogged down that I have to learn too much like around iOS development. And I think that's really cool. And I'm really happy that you came on, Kadi, today and shared all these awesome things around Expo. And I'm excited to continue to build out my project with Expo. So thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you for inviting me. That app looks cool. And
Yeah,
you got some nice borders. It looks really good.
yeah, it's work in progress, but the fact that I literally started it yesterday, that to me is amazing that within a couple of hours, especially, I did ask Claude for some of the questions and like to your point, like Claude is pretty good at knowing things, especially the fact that it has like ability to search the web. So it's pretty awesome. And to me, there's a lot of folks that think about like, oh, you have to do everything from scratch. You have to do this. And to me, being someone who just loves building cool things for clients, I think this kind of intersection between you being a software engineer and then your ability to use these tools to move faster, where instead of like if I didn't have Expo, I probably wouldn't get to here in the couple hours or three. Like it took me 4 hours. I'm not gonna lie. Yesterday
Yeah,
of just building everything, but the fact that I was able to go from zero to something in one day to me is very empowering and very amazing.
that's awesome. And yeah, I think we didn't really cover it. I kind of mentioned Replit, but I feel like there's like there's a scale of AI usage. I think at this point it is a truth that anyone who won't get on board, you're going to be left behind. But like using AI to build things doesn't have to mean vibe coding. Obviously, that's one of like that's going to be like a audience. But I feel like for most people on this call, like for developers, like we are going to be doing like AI assisted coding. So like our input, like I am not going to use like a like web based like vibe coding tool. because I find it quite like I can do better like with tools like with Claude Code like on my computer, and I think that's the case for most developers. So what is really powerful for us is like using like MCPs and like using like I don't know if you've seen there was like a post for all the
The
I think was
rules,
it yeah
those
well
skills. Yeah,
the
yeah.
animated rules
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
the post like this was huge like like getting like knowing how to do animations like getting all these okay just to take a step back, the problem historically with like all these like AI tools is that they are taught on the broad internet, right? On GitHub. And there's a lot of like terrible code on GitHub. And it doesn't know which is good code. But what we're seeing now is like all these like MCPs, like we have an MCP as well. Like all these like cursor rules, all these Claude rules, like experts like writing their knowledge down, which you can use as source of truth. So now you can like you have a much better seed, and that's why we're getting like we've reached some kind of like tipping point. I feel like thanks to these things.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And one of the things I think, like you mentioned MCPs, I think for folks that if you've never built an MCP, definitely go try to build one. I built one that uses like my Strapi app as a knowledge base of all the coding patterns that I like. And I have an MCP that basically has access to that. And whenever I'm coding now, I could ask Claude based on, what I've done in the past, my previous example, like build out this feature. And it's kind of cool to see that you're not letting AI just randomly do what it thinks it should do, but you're giving it like rules and examples that it could use to build things. And I was going to say to your point of like this idea of AI as a tool and we as engineers using it to assist us to move faster.
Mm.
I really like that approach because I find that there's divided kind of subculture where everybody vibe coded. I don't have to know what I'm doing. And as a like developer, I feel like your goal should still to be the best software engineer you can be, but also learn how to utilize these tools to move faster. And I think you could do both. You don't have to be like, oh, I'm just a vibe coder and that's all I do. So I'm kind of excited because I feel like good engineers with tools, they could like 100x their productivity.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, like, we're using, like, Claude Code internally, and one of the things that we talk about a lot is that, even though you are writing code in an AI-assisted way, you still own that code. You are
Yeah.
responsible. You can't just be like, "Oh, it doesn't work. Oh, if Claude did that. That wasn't me." Like, no, 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 no. Like, you use Claude to get a start or whatever tool, right? To get a starting point, but then you are still responsible for testing it, iterating on it. Does it make sense? Does it match the style guide? Like, it's still code that you put out. So
Yeah.
before you put out a PR, you should be happy with it. So you like review your own code several times before like it's ready for.
Yeah. So I don't want to keep you too long. And so if there's no final questions, I really just want to say thank you, Kadi, for coming in and teaching us. I learned so much. So very cool stuff you shared. And if people want to find you or follow you, where should they go?
Yeah, Twitter, LinkedIn, Blue Sky. My handle is just my name.
Awesome. Well, thanks, everybody. We'll release this on YouTube. And thanks a lot, everyone. Have a good one. Bye.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye everyone.